Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the SWL DXing News Report. This is Andre in Johannesburg, South Africa. I am recording this on the 4th of September 2025. If you are tuning in via Spotify or your favorite podcasting app, you will find the RSS feed link in the video description. If shortwave, medium wave, FM listening, radio news and DXing are your passion, you're in the right place. This month's report is a bumper edition. Highlights include Arctic Radio 252 is set for a December launch, reviving long-wave radio in Finland after 32 years. South Korea has halted anti-North Korean broadcasts, ending decades of radio psychological warfare across the DMZ. Switzerland has confirmed that FM will end by the end of 2026. Voice of America's staff cuts reflect tightening budgets and a shrinking shortwave presence for this once mighty channel. In South Africa, Cape Town's campus radio station has dropped analog FM to embrace streaming and digital-only broadcasting. And China has adopted the DRM standard, a major step towards modernizing its vast medium-wave and shortwave networks. 6 Japanese medium-wave stations will be switching entirely to FM. There are also 4 listener logs with their catches from around the world. And I end with the space weather forecast for September. Let's start with the good news. Arctic 252, a long-wave radio station in Finland, is all set for an official launch in December. Matt, the owner of the station, told me that he has been running test broadcasts, including voice broadcasts, for some weeks.
Formed in 1968 by vocalist, pianist, and singer-songwriter Erno Linda, that group became one of the first Western groups, the first Western group to play in Soviet Republic of Estonia, now free in power.
The tests have been going well, and everything seems to be ready for the official launch. This is what he said.
So the status of Arctic 252 at this present time, the station is still in testing phase. There's still a lot of work to do regarding the audio quality and the processing. So the station will stay in testing phase probably for the next few months. Work is very slow. Work is just carrying on as and when we get the time. And we hope to make an official start probably somewhere around Christmas. And actually, I'm hoping the official start will be Christmas with a Christmas special.
On to East Asia, where a decades-long practice has formally ended. According to a recent report from Deutsche Welle on the 1st of September, South Korea has officially halted all its anti-North Korean radio broadcasts, the latest being Voice of Freedom. These broadcasts, run by the South Korean military, were used to beam political messages and music across the demilitarized zone as part of what is sometimes called psychological warfare. Their suspension signals a shift in strategy. Seoul is dialing down radio pressure and looking at other diplomatic or technological tools. For DXers and those following the politics of the region, it's worth noting how significant this is. Radio has long been a key part of the inter-Korean standoff. While private groups may continue to launch balloons with leaflets and USB sticks, the official state-run broadcasts are now silent. Now to Africa. The University of Cape Town recently announced that its campus radio station is going fully digital. According to UCT News, the station is dropping its analog equipment entirely and focusing on online streaming and digital platforms. The phrasing in the article is quite striking. UCT Radio, the future is fully digital. This makes the station one of the first in Africa to take such a radical step. For student radio, the move has obvious advantages: lower costs, no need for FM transmission licenses, and the ability to reach students wherever they are on their phones and laptops. But from a hobbyist's perspective, it is sad news that yet another FM station is ending its transmissions. Heading to Europe, still on the topic of FM, the Swiss Federal Council has reaffirmed its decision to stick with the FM switch-off timeline, meaning that by the end of 2026, FM broadcasting in Switzerland will come to an end. This story has been developing for years, but it's important to underline what's happening. Switzerland was one of the first European countries to take digital audio broadcasting seriously, and DAB now covers nearly the entire country. Broadcasters and regulators argue that maintaining FM is costly and unnecessary. For DXers, though, this means that in less than 2 years, the Swiss FM band will be silent. From The Guardian comes disheartening news about the Voice of America. The US international broadcaster is facing further staff reductions and layoffs. VOA has been on the air since 1942 and has long been one of the giants of shortwave. The reductions in staff mean fewer resources for traditional radio services. This is part of a broader story, though. International broadcasting in many Western countries has contracted, while nations like China, Turkey, and Russia maintain or even expand their global radio footprint. For hobbyists, this means even fewer VOA frequencies, although, to be honest, I don't think there are any left anyway. And yes, it's sad news for shortwave. Talking of China, big digital radio news from there. Radio World confirms that China has officially adopted Digital Radio Mundial as the standard to modernize its medium wave and shortwave bands. This is a major step. China's domestic medium wave network is huge, and by moving to DRM, it will provide near FM audio quality, while also broadcasting text and data. Many Chinese stations are on DRM shortwave already. For DXers, this is exciting but also a challenge. DRM signals require specialized receivers or software decoders, but this move could open up opportunities to log DRM signals at greater distances. However, that's if you manage to find a receiver. There are not many of those around. There is some significant news from Japan. According to a report from the Japanese Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, 6 medium-wave radio stations have been approved to switch entirely to FM. This is part of a long-running policy in Japan. Many medium-wave broadcasters have been encouraged to move to FM for cost savings and improved sound quality. Some of these stations will maintain their medium-wave licenses temporarily, but the clear direction is towards an FM-only landscape. A PDF notice from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications makes it clear that this is a structural, permanent change, not just an experiment. It reflects declining listenership on medium wave and the pressure on broadcasters to reduce transmission costs. For DXers outside Japan, this of course means fewer medium wave targets. Japanese medium wave signals have been picked up across the Pacific, and there will now be fewer of those. The 6 affected stations are Aomori Hoso on 1233 kHz. It will move on the 1st of February 2026 to 91.7 MHz on FM. Toshigi Hoso on 1530 kHz. It will move on the 1st of December this year to 94.1 MHz. Yamanashi Hoso on 765 kHz. The move is on the 1st of March 2026 to 90.9 MHz. Fukui Hoso on 864 kHz. The move is on March 16, 2026 to 94.6 MHz. Shikoku Hoso on 1269 kHz. The move will be on March 23, 2026 to 93 MHz on FM. And Nankai Hoso on 1116 kHz. It will move on the 10th of February 2026 to 91.7 MHz. Now on to some shortwave frequency news, mostly good news to counter all the less than positive medium and FM news I've spoken about so far. Brother Stare appears to be back on shortwave on 5900 kHz from Sofia, Bulgaria. It seems to be on air from 0300 to 0400 UTC. Some DXers have reported hearing this. Bible Voice Broadcasting has taken over the former Brother Stare frequency on 9400 kHz. This one also comes from Sofia. Bible Voice Broadcasting can be heard from 1800 to 1830 UTC on 9400 kHz. Shokaze Seabreeze, Japan's well-known human rights broadcaster, directing its signals at Japanese abductees in North Korea, can now be heard from 2000 to 2100 UTC on 6035 kHz. This is a further signal, and all the other signals that are listed in the regular sites are still on air. I have a bumper 4 reception reports this month from Goranko in Serbia, Sebastian in Germany, Manuel in Mexico, and William in Illinois in the US. It is such good news to receive so many reception reports. There are clearly many dedicated DXers around the world, and there are still many interesting signals to catch. Manuel is from Monterrey, Mexico. He says he has been into shortwave radio for about 30 years plus. He enjoys listening to the HF broadcast bands, HF utilities, voice and digital modes, weather facts, medium wave, and FM. He also has an amateur license, and he is in the HF bands using the digital FT8 mode. Here is his list of logs. He included a few utilities. He used the RS code, so readability and strength, to indicate the signal quality. His radio is the SDR Play RSP-DX R2, and his antenna is an MLA 30+. Utilities he heard on August the 17th. 5855.6 kHz HLL Seoul Meteorological Radio at 12:15. In Korean, RS-33. 6765.1 and 8743 Bangkok Meteorological Radio in Thai at 12:31. Then the interval signal, and at 12:33 a station ID and switch to English. RS-33. 12362 VMW Marine Weather from Wiluna, Western Australia at 12:50. In English, RS-33. 12365 VMC Marine Weather from Charleville, Queensland, Australia at 1300. In English, RS-30. Broadcast signals he heard on August the 22nd. 6055 Radio Nikkei 1 from Japan at 1200 UTC. Music and comments in Japanese. SIO 444. 7425 kHz Radio New Zealand International at 12:06 UTC with a weather report and program schedule for the next hours. Then music in English. SIO 555. 9570 kHz KBS World Radio from South Korea at 12:36 UTC. Service in Indonesian with music and commentaries. SIO 333. 9920 kHz FEBC Radio from the Philippines at 12:46 UTC. Music. SIO 444. 11665 kHz RTMY Limbang FM from Malaysia at 12:50 UTC with music. SIO 444. 11810 kHz All India Radio in Pashto to Afghanistan. Music and comments at 12:55 UTC. SIO 333. 11900 kHz Reach Beyond Australia with music and comments in Hindi and some phrases in English at 1310 UTC. SIO 444. 12015 kHz Voice of Mongolia at 1320 UTC. Service in Japanese playing traditional Japanese music. He says it was difficult to hear because of adjacent utilities transmission. SIO 323. This was the first time he heard Voice of Mongolia. Sebastian from Lingen in northwestern Germany wrote about his DXing American stations on the night of 24 August. He wrote, "In summer, the South American stations usually fade in at around 0300 local time, 0100 UTC, at his location in Germany. He says the previous night was unusual because he did not hear Radio Mosochaski, the one from Bolivia, at 3310 kHz, nor did he hear Radio Tarma at 4775 kHz, nor Radio 9 de Julio at 9818 kHz. But he heard Voz Missionaria on 9665 kHz, not on 5940 kHz though, and he did not hear Radio Rebelde at 5025 kHz either. He says there was one surprising result though. He got Radio Progreso from Cuba at 4765 kHz with a SINPO of 15341. They played several songs with short announcements between songs. He says the quality was good enough so that Shazam could help him identify the songs. They played, among others, Victor Manuel and Wisin, their song Boogaloo Supreme, Joey Pastrana and his orchestra with a piece called Rikichi, and Sonora Caruseles with Federico Boogaloo. Goranko, who lives in a small village outside Belgrade, has become a regular contributor to this podcast with his reception reports. Thank you so much for your regular reports, Goranko. Goranko uses Chinese-made radios that he bought at markets in Belgrade. At the moment, he is using the Washiba and the GDD radio. These are not brands that are necessarily well known, but Goranko seems to get excellent results. Here is his shortwave reception report for August, with 1 or 2 medium wave catches in between. On August the 3rd, he heard the following. Voice of Turkey in Turkish, 9650 kHz at 0400 UTC, SIO 555. Radio Akashvani in Persian on 15280 kHz at 0415 UTC, SIO 555. Radio Romania International on 11630 kHz at 1815 UTC, SIO 444. On August the 4th, he heard Radio Romania International in English on 9740 kHz at 2245 UTC, SIO 444. On August the 5th, he heard the following stations. BBC in English on 9670 kHz at 1215 UTC, SIO 555. Radio Romania International in Italian on 9520 kHz at 1410 UTC, SIO 555. Radio Romania International in Romanian on 15340 kHz at 1415 UTC, SIO 555. On August the 6th, he heard a medium wave station, Radio Cluj, on 1404 and 1593 kHz at 1735 UTC. This was with an SIO of 444. On August the 7th, he heard Magyar Radio Nemzeti Szégi Adások, that's Hungarian, I don't know how to pronounce that, on 1188 kHz at 1555 UTC, with an SIO of 555. Also, Danko Radio on 1251 kHz at 1555 UTC, SIO 555. On August the 9th, he heard Voice of Korea on 15245 kHz at 1725 UTC, with an SIO of 555. On August the 10th, Radio Vatican on 9705 kHz, also on 11870 and 15595 kHz at 1845 UTC, SIO 555. On August the 15th, China Radio International in Serbian on 9585 kHz at 2015 UTC, SIO 555. On August the 30th, he heard AWR in Canada on 15680 kHz at 1556 UTC, SIO 444. And Ibra Radio Sana in the Arabic language on 15260 kHz at 1755 UTC, SIO 555. I also have a report from William in southern Illinois in the US. He actually sent me 2 reception reports. The latest one he sent was for the morning of the 4th of September at about 4 a.m. his local time. He says he woke up early and he took his radio and he DXed a bit. The UTC time was 0930 UTC. He picked up Estación 4940, that is 4940 kHz from Colombia. This became his 53rd country heard. He also picked up RTE Radio 1, this is Irish radio, via WRMI on 5850, 7570 and 9395. He says it was quite unusual to listen to local news, weather and commercials from the Republic of Ireland on shortwave. Also, during this session, he heard Voice of Korea on 7220, Radio New Zealand on 7425, and KNLS Alaska on 9545 kHz. Then, during another listening session on the 1st of September, from 1400 to 1430 UTC, he heard the following stations: 17815 kHz, Voice of Turkey in Turkish, SIO 354. 15770 kHz, WRMI in English, 555. 15575 kHz, KBS World Radio in Korean, 252. 13780, Radio Havana, Cuba in Spanish, they played music, SIO 253. And then he heard Radio Marti in Spanish with an SIO of 555 on 3 frequencies, 13605, 11930 and 11860 kHz. On 11955 kHz, he heard China Radio International in Indonesian, SIO 151. 11870 kHz, Sound of Hope from Taiwan in Mandarin, SIO 333. There was QRM from Radio Marti. On 9675 kHz, CRI with music. And on 6070 kHz, CFRX Toronto in English. Then later on the same day, around 1445 UTC, he heard Radio Japan in Burmese on 11815 kHz and Radio Havana, Cuba with music on 11760 kHz. Thank you so much to William, Sebastian, Goranko and Manuel for their reception reports. I would really like to encourage all listeners to send me their reception reports. Let's share what we hear with other DXers around the world and keep our hobby alive. To end, as usual, the HF propagation forecast for the first weeks of September. There was a geomagnetic storm during the first days of September. It actually reached G3 levels, and there were some auroras at latitudes far away from the poles. The KP index rose to between 4 and 5 from September the 3rd to the 5th. But for the rest of this month, conditions are expected to be mostly normal to fair. That is, barring any unexpected solar storms. So conditions for HF listening should be quite good for most of September, but keep your eye on the space weather predictions from various agencies around the world. Check the links in the description of this video for where you can check these reports. And that brings me to the end of episode 28. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've got station news or a reception report to share, I'd love to hear from you. If you do share reception reports, please include your location, your radio, the frequencies, the station IDs, and SINPO or SIO codes. You can reach me at andre9@duck.com. That is Alpha November Delta Romeo Echo 9@duck.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy DXing.
Andre the man from a land so wide,